It was brutal. It was cynical. There was no notice, no warning. 800 employees of the ferry company P&O were sacked, many of them people who, of course, had worked for the company for the whole of their lives. What made it even worse was the way in which it was done. Take a look at this.
Therefore, I am sorry to inform you that this means your employment is terminated with immediate effect on the grounds of redundancy. Your final day of employment is today.
There we are, sacked by Zoom. But what makes it even worse is they're to be replaced by cheaper foreign workers who were already loaded onto coaches, ready to go onto the boats and take those positions. Now, of course, we all understand that P&O had a very bad pandemic. People weren't travelling. Of course, they ran up some considerable losses. But think about this. They're actually wholly owned by DP World, a big United Arab Emirates company. A company that makes huge profits of around about £1 billion every single year. A firm that has got very close links to state-owned Russian companies and has been quite supportive of Vladimir Putin in the past. A firm that pays out big dividends to its shareholders and huge amounts of money to its bosses. Now, Boris Johnson was in the UAE yesterday. I don't suppose they told him about this, but my goodness me, it is a real kick in the teeth. And try this for size. P&O took furlough money during the lockdowns of £150 million, and yet these 800 members of staff have been sacked. I think it's an absolute disgrace. I really, really do. I'm asking you tonight the question, does Brexit Britain deserve better than this? Let me know what you think. Farage at GBNews.uk. And I certainly do. You know, one of the points of Brexit is we're going to put the country, its workers and its people first. That simply hasn't happened. And it's going to be devastating for many, many of those areas. Hull, as Ellie mentioned, there was a sit-in as the sacked workers refused to leave the boat, as the coach loads of new agency workers were supposed to come in. I do know that quite a lot of people who are moving onto those boats come from Colombia. As to where the rest of the people come from, I simply don't know. But to argue that it's losing 100 million a year, well, of course it is. It's been closed down for 2 years. But they did take, I repeat the point, they did take £150 million of furlough money. So I think the whole thing is an absolute disgrace. And this is not the country that it's supposed to be. You know, one of the reasons we voted Brexit is we saw British workers constantly being undercut. We saw a labour market that was flooded, in many cases making the minimum wage the maximum wage. People who voted Brexit voted for better than this, and the government had better have a very, very rapid think about how it responds. It's no good just saying this is not acceptable. How are we going to protect British workers? Or, am I wrong? Is this just the modern, globalised world that we live in? Well, if it is, and if corporate profits come above people's jobs and communities, I'd much rather take the latter than the former. I'd much rather say, well, even if we're not quite as competitive, at least we keep our country together and we keep trust in the whole system together, because this is one of the most cynical sackings I have ever seen in my life. My late friend, and this may surprise you, but my late friend, Bob Crow, was, of course, boss of the RNT years ago, died very prematurely. And, you might raise an eyebrow. How could Bob and I agree? Actually, we did agree on lots of big things, like the need to leave the European Union, the need to control our borders, the need to put the interests of British workers first. And I'm sure if he was still alive today, he'd be making a lot of noise about this. It is a disgrace. What it will lead to, I don't know. If it was France, we'd see blockades of the ports. Whether that will happen here or not, I've no idea. But I do feel very, very sorry for these people.